Welcome to another episode of the Career Keynotes podcast with Tincup and Gardiner, where William and Andrew chop it up with respected Silicon Valley talent acquisition and HR leaders to get the real story behind their career journeys, along with an insider's view of how companies engage with candidates. Let's face it, these days, finding the job, much less nailing down an interview, is not easy. This is a rare opportunity to learn firsthand what companies are looking for in a candidate and the best ways to engage with them. And now, here are William and Andrew.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Career Keynotes. I am really excited about this episode because our guest is a good friend and someone I've known and worked with a lot over the years. And I as you know, our goal here is to add value and educate and help people. And Chris will do that and more. So it was important to come out strong early on. So I'll be very surprised if you don't love this episode. So as you already know, I tend to be kind of effusive in my description of people. So without a lot of, and we've got producer Bev here and William Tincup, my co-host. But our guest for today's show is Chris Galy. And so, Chris, if you could just take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself and give the listeners and viewers some context about you, who you are, that would be great.
Beverly, thank you for having me. And Andrew and William, great to be here. So look, I'm just a kid that grew up in the Big Easy. Went into the military for a little bit and fell into a profession that I didn't know existed. And fortunately for me, it happened to be exactly what I was looking for. And we'll probably dig into some of the details. But, that got me to a point where once I dedicated myself to human resources as a career, I've had the privilege to work for the companies I have and doing the things that I've done. And the creme de la creme is my job that I have today, which is the Chief People Officer at Couchbase. We're based out of Santa Clara. We're a NoSQL database company, and we're right in the middle of all of this digital transformation that is been accelerated because of the pandemic even. So feel very blessed to be with you today.
So I have to ask this, sorry, Andrew, but I have to ask this question because New Orleans and St. Louis are the two only cities that I know of where people ask you what high school you went to. Throughout my travels, it's a weird bit. Like in New Orleans, like they don't ask you. They might ask you what college, but they ask you like what high school you went to, and I'm like, man, we're like 30 and 40 years or 20 something years removed from that. Like, why are we even talking about that? Is that true? So first of all, do I have that?
So by the way, I went to Jesuit High School in New Orleans. And so they will associate you, with your high school and it's part of the community. It's part of, because the next step is, would you know this person, this person, this person? So, and that's probably where my recruiting roots actually began. And they just expected everybody's going to go to LSU, Tulane, or Loyola. So, but that's where, they could tell a lot about a person, kind of what part of the city they grew up in or what socioeconomic status, generally speaking, or and sports are really, really big in Louisiana. And so, it's a natural icebreaker as well as a means of affiliation.
That's hilarious. So one of the Manning brothers, clearly. Or somebody because again, it's that closeness.
That's right. Everybody knows it was always 1 degree of separation, not 7 in New Orleans for sure.
Too funny. Andrew, I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, it's a great, whatever direction we go in, it's going to be positive. So Chris, you were very understated in your intro and that's part of your charm, but just to give more context for the listeners and viewers, Chris went to West Point and was a helicopter pilot in the Army. He also was a catcher at LSU. So I might have
West Point, yeah.
I'm sorry, West Point.
My brothers played for LSU. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, both of them.
So that's not insignificant. And if I went to West Point, I'd be wearing a West Point shirt right now. In fact, I didn't go to West Point, and I have a West Point shirt now. So that's
Well, hold on. Let me get on some of my Go Army Beat Navy stuff.
no. But the point I bring forth is with that military background, I just, if you could go back, and so that's extra context for the viewers and listeners about Chris. But Chris, if you could just go back and spend a few minutes on how just from West Point to
Smart.
HR or recruiting would be lovely.
Well, it definitely sounds like a very asynchronous journey, but as I got older and I got to know a little bit more about myself and what I like doing and what my interests and passions are, it actually isn't that far of a stretch. And honestly, I just had a good conversation with another ex-Army aviator who is in HR at NASA, and there's a lot more of us that have made this transition, not directly even from Army human resources to corporate human resources, but leadership roles in the Army, combat roles in the Army, and recognizing that the laying out of the strategy, the mission planning, the inspiration of the troops, taking care of each other, the team aspects, hard decisions in very short time frames to make them, the situational awareness, all of those things are things that I've leveraged in my entire career in many different roles inside of HR, because I've done lots of roles. But I grew up in a small business. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a pharmacist. We had a corner pharmacy in my part of town. And we were kind of, part of that community that, you have your priest and you have your pharmacist and you have your doctors and lawyers. And, this goes back to everybody kind of knows everybody and looks out for everybody. And so that small business growing up gave me a lot of, values orientation and customer centric thinking, community approach that I didn't really know was something that I'd ultimately be taking into an HR career. But it was also that service orientation was probably the origination of why I was interested in being in the military, although the military offered me a lot of other things that I would not get if I stayed in New Orleans or Louisiana, that, as an Enneagram 7, for those of you who have taken the Enneagram. I seek joy and excitement and exploration. And so in the military, and the reason why I was really attracted to West Point was because I wanted to study leadership and I wanted to study organizations and I wanted to push myself. And honestly, I needed structure as one of the benefits. Structure frustrates me, but at the same time, I needed to perform at my best. And I did kind of recognize that. The other thing I recognized while I was going to watch my brothers play at LSU is that I was not in the same league as anyone in his team or the people they were playing that filled the, that filled the baseball professional leagues for many years to come. But I did want to play at the next level and had dreams of doing so. And that was part of the decision-making process. But in the end, I knew I was going to have a job after. And I did for several years. When you graduate from the academy, you required to give a certain number of years of service. Now, what's interesting is many of the years that I served, I was actually doing HR type of stuff. The Army was in a downturn. Part of my job was doing reductions in force. I wasn't designated as a human resources person, but I was one of the officers that was on staff, and that ultimately became part of my job, and also part of the reason why I ended up leaving the military and deciding to pursue a career in the reserves as opposed to in the active units. But so then I decided to get out of the military, and I'm interviewing for jobs, and I was actually shooting for tech sales, and I couldn't get anybody to take a bet of me in tech sales. And it was a recruiter that I was working with who said, "Have you ever thought about recruiting?" And I'm like, "Why would I want to do that?"
It's a legit question.
Yes. I'm like, wait, what? I mean, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, this is easy, right? I'm the barbarian trying to climb over the gate at Rome, thinking that everybody is, that I had no idea on what I was getting myself into. But I knew I wanted tech, and I knew I wanted into Silicon Valley. The only thing that I did was I said, okay, I'll take the job. I'm sure it's going to be easy, not a problem. I'll take the pay, but you're going to want to pay me more later once you see what I could do. And but I want to make sure that whatever job you give me, that I also get to cover sales, because I want to start building those relationships, because I'm your next sales hire, right? And so, and I did, and it worked out. And a couple of months later, the sales team came to me and said, we're going to open up a job. Do you want it? And I said, honestly, no, I could best serve you and the company by helping you build great teams than I can by just carrying a bag and adding revenue. And that was kind of one of the first points where I said, I'm starting to figure out what this human resources thing is, and I like it. But I still feel that to this day, and the role that human resources plays, and not just building teams, but making them better, building leaders who engage and inspire, making sure that you're building great workplaces and great work environments. And that's what now, there have been times where I've wanted to punch out of HR. I've gotten frustrated, or, is the company really serious about this people thing that they keep saying? What are they willing to invest? Am I wasting my time? How many times do I have to have a candidate say that, they accepted the offer and came back and declined because of some, thing that kind of would not make me happy. And so, but I think part of the reason why I've done it and stayed in as long as I have, besides enjoying the work and having some level of choice about what I do, is because I think I help and have helped more people going through career transitions or looking for their next thing that never end up working for the company that I'm advocating for. And that's just a real kind of cool, awesome, service-minded, service-oriented thing that it's always been a part of me, and always something that's been important to me. And it's great that you get to do it inside of your company, but it's also great that you get to have some help. So, in long story short, everything that I've done, playing sports, going in the military, not being afraid to take a risk of doing something I'd never done, getting lucky, finding out that I like a certain profession that I never knew existed, and being able to go work for companies that have helped me grow and made me better and made me more confident in my cause and my passion has been awesome. And
I love
that's
it.
Hopefully what the definition of human resources is all about.
True that. I love that you've studied leadership, and this is you as a student of leadership for your entire life, it seems. So looking back just on your it's your career right now, you got a long way to go, but your career right now, what are some of the leadership characteristics where you've flourished and then where you've not flourished?
Yeah.
And again, we don't need to know names. It's just, what are those characteristics that have really kind of
Yeah.
helped you,
Well,
and ones that strangle you?
You're right. Look, I think most people, some of the leaders that I've least like working for, I've learned the most from. And some of that was learning that I never want to lead like that. Right.
Yep.
And some of these folks are still people that I connect with, and they weren't bad people. They just had a different style, and it helped me learn faster and how not to lead than great ways to lead. It's not to say that I couldn't be myself in the military, because I do have, when I have focus, I can be very execution oriented. The military wasn't necessarily, completely tops down. There's a time where tops down is the right way or people die. But I did find military leadership to be one that gave me enough freedom to experiment with becoming my own leader, and supported by an amazing set of training and just watching, right? I mean, the West Point was a leadership factory, leadership laboratory, and you got to watch all of these different people, you know, cadets and officers who are involved in the cadet experience, and everybody learning and helping and supporting each other. And I see that, and that was always a benefit of having that experience, and then having, you know, the military officer background coming into HR, because I was able to help coach and help people who are either new to management or struggling with it at the same time, but help them learn how to manage and be comfortable with managing their own way. But funny enough, I think, and I got really, and you know, a large part of my career was in very operationally driven roles in talent acquisition. And for me, those are easy. It's like, what's the number you got to hit? Let's go hit it. Here's what we got to do. Have you thought about it? And so it was very easily measured. My job after my first stint as a TA person was in the HR business partner world, and I struggled at first. Like, how do you add value? I'm giving these leaders great examples of what they should do, but they choose not to, and it blows up, and I got to go fix it, right? And so those were some of the most frustrating days, but some of the most rewarding days, because I realized that I was giving them advice on how to be me. And so it helped me. And then that's around the time I went and started getting my master's in ODHR. And I was learning things. And so the work was actually a laboratory for me, not just to help me be a better leader, but how do I coach and train others to be the leaders that they want to be? And that changed my perspective on ultimately going back to, you know, to talent acquisition at Xilinx and then at Intuit. It helped me be a much better TA leader, not because the HR business partner job, you look at things from a little bit different view. I also found out that I really wasn't as good of a TA leader previously, because I was just going towards the goals that my team needed to hit. I had complete tunnel vision. I just assumed that my leaders gave me those goals because they were in line with what the business wanted and needed. And I've always worked and collaborated well with HR business partners, but I was the first person to go around them when I thought that they were in my way. And so I got a little bit of taste of my own doing. So so that, combined with some of the things and the master's program, really helped me solidify the type of leader that I wanted to be. And then ultimately going to Intuit was the, you know, I would say the PhD program, because they really helped me feel comfortable with being myself and being a leader. I mean, I'm a jokester. I was the class clown. I had some ADD, and even though we didn't diagnose it back then, but I was a pain in the ass for most of my teachers. They liked me because I was fun and I added value, but then I would go over the top, and then things would just go off the rails. And so over the years, I've learned how to control that, but I almost suppressed that in the military, and then I suppressed that in the operational leadership roles, and I only got comfortable with that, with becoming more of myself, with some limits and some caps, some guardrails, in my time at Intuit, where I was just around a bunch of amazing leaders with a company that really understood it and invested in people to become better leaders. And so that journey has been an amazing journey. And then my job after Intuit, I got to put that into practice, leading HR for auction.com/10x, and then learned a lot of lessons, and have been bringing those lessons and adapting the things that I think are important with the culture and the leadership expectations at Couchbase. And so it's just a complete series of learnings. And I'm nobody special, other than the fact that I just love what I do. I'd never think that I have the right answer, but sometimes I do, and I need you to prove to me that it's not. And it's about selfless service and putting the needs of others and the goals of your companies ahead of your own. And I believe that ultimately that's been the success of my own personal success, and I've been rewarded nicely as a result. And I enjoy doing the work that I do as well. long-winded answer to your question. I bet you
No,
didn't think,
it's
William, that you'd get all that, did you?
Dude, I was taking notes. Are you kidding me?
Everybody lean in if you're watching or listening to this. Here are some of the things you just said that are priceless and invaluable feedback for anybody doing anything. Hard is better for lessons. You don't learn anything when the biggest lessons and you just called it out were when you struggle. The HRBP story is a great example of that. The other thing, I was trying to teach everybody how to be me. And so you
Genius.
learn how to, as you've done with and for me, I'm one of those people that you so selflessly help figure out what they were doing and how to be more successful in their role. And that selflessness it just pays off in spades. And you're so shucks about it, but it's really not insignificant. And I think lastly, and most importantly, just what you said about like you are a rebel, you are a trailblazer. I think we all go through this thing, and I'm not unlike you in the ADD. I'm sorry, what was your name again? All that stuff. I probably have it like 10x you, but still, you figured out, you were trying to, what's that quote? The common man, the crazy, whatever. There's a quote about that says people would spend their whole life trying to figure in to be the system. And then they figure out, oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to make the system figure out for me. It's a much better quote, and you did it early on enough where you could really make an impact, and you have made an impact. And I do love that about you. Because you are not afraid to make mistakes. You are not afraid to take chances. And I think that's largely why you've been so successful. So, but let's go back and let's talk about, okay, I'm never not amazed because TA of the triumvirate of, HR, comp and benefits, training and development, and TA. And TA is, in my opinion, the hardest and the most valuable. So the fact that you like it and you're good at it speaks volumes, but you've managed to parlay that into an overarching head of HR thing, which is not easy to do. So what are some of the, stumbling blocks or roadblocks or lessons for you on that journey?
Honestly, even though being the head of HR was something that, you go, yeah, maybe that's what I want to do. I was never really, that wasn't the end goal. The end goal was continue learning. So even when I was in talent acquisition, I went out and got my World at Work certified comp professional, because I just felt like I needed to know more to be able to be better at my sweet spot is talent acquisition. Right now, I love organizational development and learning and development, and I love what I've come to learn, and that I didn't expect in being able to lead HR, is how fun it is to be able to put all of these pieces together to make a difference. And so the learning for me is I should have actually tried to become a top HR leader sooner. It didn't detract from what I could do, I just like the work so much. When you pick the right jobs to do it in, and you pick the right people to do it with, and you pick the right company, it's a lot of fun. And I'm I guess at the peak of my career. I just wish I would have peaked earlier. So it is like, I don't do anything unless it's worth doing. And I don't do anything unless it's with people that and however, I look back at my career, and there were times where I should have pulled the plug a little bit earlier. That that service orientation made me stick around a little bit longer than I should have, because I wasn't thinking enough about me and my career. Now, ultimately, I've made good career moves, but I made moves based upon what I wanted to learn. I made moves based upon a combination of, obviously compensation is important, but I didn't make moves even when there were times where I could have made a whole lot more money, because it wasn't the right thing for me, either from a values alignment perspective. It wasn't right for my family as I was growing my family, or whatever that situation is. It was always okay for me to say no. Although some of those in hindsight are pretty regrettable no's.
Yeah, CHRO at Tesla. Yeah, at this particular moment, yes, I should have taken that job. I think that's fair.
But again, you work hard, you do the things you do, so you make the choices. And once I make a choice, I don't ever really look back. I like, how do I optimize this, and how do I get what I need from it while I'm also serving others, and that balance between probably put a little bit too much emphasis sometime on the serving others. That caused me to stay at certain places a little bit too long, but I have no regrets. I've made only really good career moves.
I love it. So I've got two questions, but I only want you to pick one of them.
Okay.
So the first question is, and again, this is all in HR and TA, the toughest assignment that you've had that you look at, that you can look back at and go,
Sure.
Yeah, that was insane. Or the second question, an innovation, something that you wanted to innovate, an innovation that kind of terrified you, that kind of kept you up at night.
Yeah.
So you can take either of those.
Yeah, look, I'll try to actually weave both those in the same story if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So when I was at Intuit, we had this planning cycle, and it's a 3-year planning cycle, 1 year kind of check-ins, and then we would take all of that input from the business, and of course that's part of how we would plan for the talent and succession and mobility and things like that. But 1 year, the business came back and said, hey, we want to start this project called Ask a Tax Expert, because we think that a lot of people do not end up filing. They go through the whole process of doing their taxes online, but don't file because they're unconfident, or they wish they had an expert to talk to. I'm like, you know what? Honestly, as a user of our own product, I think that's a great idea. Even if I do have an accountant, I think it's a great idea, because ultimately, having that person to talk to because the big fear is, am I going to get audited, or is this going to trigger something that is going to make me either pay a whole lot more or not pay enough, and then I get audited. And so I thought it was a brilliant idea. But what they said was, well, we want to hire 1,500 CPAs. I said, okay, that
over 2 or 3 years, no problem.
Yeah. And we want to hire them starting 2 months from now. And I said, that could be challenging, but I'm always up for a challenge. So, long story short, 1,500 CPAs working on the phones or in chat, which is not a way that CPAs work, not working for the hourly rate that CPAs work for. And I didn't have a recruiting team focused specifically. So Intuit had 2 tax businesses, one for consumer tax and one that went after, they built products for the tax professionals themselves.
Right.
And so I started thinking about this, and I go, well, wait a minute, and thankfully CPAs and enrolled agents, which are kind of the federal certified CPAs. So CPAs are qualified, certified by the states, and then enrolled agents is a very similar type of role that they get certified federally. And the great thing is that because they're certified, you can go find them online pretty easily. So we knew that finding them wasn't going to be the issue. And Terry Colligan, who is driving our sourcing efforts for this project, like extreme shining of brilliance, figured out how we could actually get those lists from the IRS for very, very cheap. Now all we had to do is, we had just put in our candidate sourcing tool, and thankfully we had some of that in place, because we were pushing out hundreds of thousands of emails to try to get people interested. And you had to build all of that. And we were working very closely with the tax team. And one of the other pieces of brilliance was we realized that we couldn't couldn't rely just on the candidate relationship management tools, that we really needed marketing. And other than some brand stuff, and so we early on in the projects, we weren't hitting any of I mean, this is a project where I literally spent 2 out of 5 nights under my desk, right? Sleeping under my, like, it was the most fun, challenging. We did things, we got agencies together to work together. I had a 3 times a week stand up with 3 or 4 different agencies who are in direct competition with each other, trying to incentivize them to help. Like there were all kinds of protocols that we were breaking, and finding the right agencies and the right people to drive ended up being just an amazing experience, amazing project. Building out the processes, what are the specific things that will predict success, and learning all the way through. It was a complete, like, the perfect definition of agile Scrum, in it to win it, all together, one for all for one. And we found the right ways to incentivize everybody. But it was really, really challenging. I didn't see my family for 3 months, essentially, right? We had this whole crew of people, and what we learned was we still weren't looking at we built this whole, pipeline, and what the pipeline needed to look like, and we weren't hitting our numbers the entire project. It was every week I was in the stand up with the executives. I was like, well, we're red, but here's why I think it's red going to yellow. So, forget about the fact that you guys made a totally impossible ask, and you need to give me like $10 million to actually go out and do this in a time frame. And I can't promise you that even once we hire these people, they're going to work out, to some degree. But it was the first time, and it was the closest that I've been brought into, like, the business of TurboTax, and it was so fun. And so, I mean, it was hard being the center of attention, always in the red. And of course, the moral of the story is we turned green on the last day of the project, and it ended up being all great. But it was such a big learning experience about funnel. We called it funnelology. We learned so much from the TurboTax marketing team. Basically said, this is so important, we're giving you the marketing team, right? And that's after this project, we started building out our talent marketing team, and there was just so many lessons and so many wins, and some really, really tough times. I didn't really fear about getting fired. I was like, at some point, I almost wish they would have. But it was such a huge, amazing learning journey, and the fact that we met it. And now, if you actually pay attention to all of the football ads and everything else,
dude, I was just gonna say,
it is a business
still doing it. I mean, your legacy lives on, and those ads are actually brilliant. You've seen the one where they're like, hey, I just caught lobsters on Maine, and
I love that. I love that.
And then the chick playing the clown, hey, those shoes, you can write those shoes off. The guy looks like Bozo the clown. It's brilliant. And it's a great listen. I knew this was going to happen. We're already, and we got to pivot here at some point. But Chris, that is a great story on a number of levels, because it shows how hard it was. It shows how fun it was. It shows your willingness to go outside the guardrails and be successful. And you gotta play big to win big, and you did. And oh, by the way, the legacy still lives on, and it's a perfect segue, because you also did a lot of mentoring while you were there, and turned out a lot of TA leaders that I had the privilege of meeting. I want to name drop, but Brett, Nick, Derek, and on and on and on. And you weren't like, hey, I mean, you just did it, and back to your team building.
Well, the funny thing is that there's an offset between the Canadian tax season and the U.S. tax season. So actually, once we did the U.S., we got to do Canada. And Tom, I tossed that one to Tom Barr. I'm like, all right, dude, I'm going to go. I'm checking out for a couple of weeks. I'm going to catch up on some sleep. Here's what you got to know. Now, and so it was one of those really, really memorable journeys. But I learned, because that was the first time I really felt like I was truly part of the business, part of the operational business. I mean, it's not that you don't feel part of the team when you're doing HR work, but that was the first time where I had the same goals as the business leaders, and we were all going to meet them together or not. And you know how squirrely those situations can get. But to the credit of Mark at Notriani, who was the inventor and leader of that project, and Dan, who was the GM of TurboTax at the time, like they said, this is big. So look, we got to win. This isn't a TA thing. This isn't a business thing. This is an Intuit thing. And hey, there it is.
Here you are. Okay, so I kind of
Live to tell about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I watched TA and HR age people. It will take your soul. I don't know how you're so actually I do know how you're so resilient. So I want to pivot. We need to pivot and go to, okay, so Chris, obviously you know a lot about TA. Is there anything else? I mean, is there anything you want to close with, like that you would or wouldn't do, or tell your younger self or do differently based on everything that you know and you just talked about?
I wouldn't have pressured the Google recruiter who called me when Google was about 150 people, because I kept pressing like, wait, what? Like, I get everything I need from Alta Vista. Yeah, I get everything I need from Alta Vista.
Ask Jeeves. What are you talking? Why am I not fulfilled by Ask Jeeves? Yeah.
No, and that is kind of a true
Alta
story.
Vista.
If you were that recruiter out there who called me,
I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, you were right. I don't know. Look, I'm one of my weaknesses is I probably don't reflect enough. I'm always looking at what's next, but and maybe it's said from a position because I could look back now and see all the great things that I was a part of, and the blessings that I had to work at some of the companies at the time that I did with the people that I did. But probably the thing that I didn't really care about as much as I do now, because I now only have a couple of bites at the apple left, is how important it is to align your values with the values of the organization. I mean, in the reality, it doesn't mean that there are good organizations and bad organizations. There are just some that are better fit for you. That, when you want to bring yourself to work, and a lot of people don't, because they don't feel like they may not be accepted. Now, look, if you want to bring yourself to work and you go to work at a place that you can bring yourself to work and you're just a jerk, that is it. But there is something to be said about finding that place, finding your tribe, finding your community, finding the missions that you're interested and passionate in. And there was a shift for me when I went to Intuit. Not that I didn't like my other jobs, but Intuit's business was about helping small businesses, and I grew up in a small business. And so every time I was thinking about how does what I do impact the customer, I'm thinking about every decision I make is either going to help my dad run his business and my mom run their business better, or not. And so, when you could find those connections and you like the work and you like the people and you like and there's values alignment, that's when work can be really, really fun. And I didn't realize that about Couchbase because I had not been in deep software infrastructure. But behind every app is a database, and the things that our product and our technology allows developers and DevOps people and do things at scale. If you just go to Couchbase.com and look at the mission critical apps that are running on our product, it touches everybody's lives every day. And it's just kind of like the Intel inside, where nobody really knows or cares. And but you're allowed to have that impact. And so when you hear the stories of the healthcare companies saving people's lives based upon our technology, or all of the work and the insights that are being found during COVID, and it's run on our technology, that's when it gets really, really fun and impactful. And I would say, where you can find all of that earlier on in your career, that it's beneficial. It's not to say that that's the right place or right job for you, but where you could find that, I think you'll have a much better chance of when you put your pillow on that, when you put your head on the pillow at the end of the night, that you feel really satisfied.
First of all, last question for me. I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times during the show, but you obviously attended and graduated West Point. You're out. You served your military. Thank you for serving, by the way.
Thank you.
What's because you're on the other side of that now in HR and recruiting, what's the single thing that we could do to help hire more veterans?
You just hire them, give them a chance. Look for the intangibles, look for the indirect correlations. And this is not just veterans. And so, I spend a lot of my time with veterans, and, I'm one of kind of the founding members of VetsinTech, and I'm passionate. And obviously a lot of people over my career who are transitioning from the military either called me or I knew them in the military and they called for advice. And it's not unlike any other transition where you're going into something that there's some unknowns and you have lots of questions and it's hard to find answers. The best thing that we could do as recruiters and as HR people is screen people in versus screen them out. And so, there are challenges because languages are different. The words we use in the military is different than corporate, but when you really pull it back, most of the military is just a corporation of sorts that has a unique culture and a unique mission, right? Defending freedom. It's important to not just take the easy route, even though managers sometimes want it, to say, well, this person worked at a competitor, they had the same job title, they're ready for the next level, just hire them. The issue with hiring is that most people approach it as a risk mitigation exercise. They also want to have people hit the ground running fast, and they're willing to trade off potential and upside for that, because it is, when you hire somebody that hasn't done specifically what you're doing, what you're asking them to do, there is a toll on the organization, not just you as the manager. And I do get that. And sometimes the right thing is to just go after, somebody who has direct industry experience in that job. It's the same reason why sometimes it's hard to move up inside of a company. It's the same reason when you look at diversity hiring in general, why some people who could be doing the job, if you just gave them a little bit of help or you gave them a shot, right, and the support that goes along with it, and I understand it, but what ends up happening is that people will turn to some of these non-traditional talent pools when they can't find anybody else. And then all of a sudden they realize, wow, there's this big, great talent pool of veterans, or big, great talent pool of African-Americans or Latinas or whatever. And the reality is that the systems that we use to sift through the resumes are cutting all those people out. And it takes time, money, and resources that most companies don't have to do the right thing. And so the other side is there's the candidate piece that are selling themselves short, that aren't making it easy for those recruiters to see the connections, that aren't doing what they should do to build the relationships and the knowledge. There's so much free online education now. There's so many things people can be doing to start chipping away and whittling away at those gaps. They got to get their pitch together. And so this is what we do with VetsinTech. And there's the education piece and making sure that you're bridging the skills gap. There's the employment piece on both sides, working with the companies and working with the candidates themselves to make those matches more apparent. And then there's obviously, a group of people who are always going to be more entrepreneurial, bigger risk takers, and finding the right people to get them and their ideas in front of. That's how VetsinTech works. And it's kind of it's a system, because if we get those veteran entrepreneurs up and running, they're going to want to hire more veterans, right? So the systems are broke. It's complex. In a way, it's not anybody's fault. In a way, it's everybody's fault. And I would just say the baseline principle is for managers and employers, screen people in, look for the things that you're going to be willing to take a chance on people. Find the unlikely similarities or continuities. And for candidates, look, it's outwit, outsmart, outplay. And you could sit back and say it's everybody's fault, or you could go do something about it. And the job you want may not be the first job you get. It might be the third job. The job you want might be the third job, but you got to outwit, outsmart, and outplay, because there's a lot of people out there that are great people that wish they had the job that you're going for. And many of them actually have the experience that you don't. So hopefully that helps.
God, Chris, we gotta. It doesn't matter if we're going to go long, because I'm sure we have everyone's.
Well, I can't go long because I have a meeting with my CEO in 1 minute.
Oh no! Well, okay. Well, gosh. Oh my God! Because everything.
There's a part two. Done.
Okay. Well. Okay.
We can't mess that. We can't mess this call up.
Shoot. Producer Bev, I didn't give you a bite at the apple. Do you want to ask Chris anything?
Gosh, I don't have something that'll fit into a minute. Just my background's retail, so to come to this is different, but the soft skills are so surprisingly transferable. What transferred for you from a helicopter pilot to your current role? What's one thread you could put?
I think there's two things. Obviously, it was more than just being a helicopter pilot. It was being a military officer, and so many of those things transferred over. But the skills part of the helicopter training was really challenging, and I had to work really hard for it. And but there were technical aspects that made my brain work harder, that I've leveraged and utilized in HR work. And so, pushing myself to go beyond just the normal psychology, HR type of curriculum, which, West Point forced me to do that anyway. I had to take engineering. I wouldn't have, but I'm glad I did. And that helped me at flight school. And then that same construct of using both sides of the brain has helped me in HR as well.
Oh,
Can you play the piano?
No, but that's one of my goals for retirement.
Nice.
Harry Connick Jr. needs you.
So not everything, but most everything I've learned about hiring veterans, and I've learned from you. I know there's all this research that supports apples to apples. If you had two candidates, they were equally qualified or a same background, and one was a veteran and one was a civilian, the veteran would outperform, outwit, outplay. He'd be on time, no excuses. Okay, we got to let you go. Do you have a weird, silly HR story you want to leave us with on the edge of our seat?
I'll tell you something real quick. So one of my first hires, it was actually my first hire, Kevin Yenchek, if you're out there. Kevin Yenchek, we hired, he was a college basketball player, Holy Names up around Oakland area. And he came to us on a referral. We hired him. He was our first talent acquisition coordinator. And he was doing a great job, and he wanted to be a recruiter. So I was grooming him, and I had him shadow me in one interview one time. And I'll never forget this, because I came into the interview and I said, "Hi, I'm Chris, and this is Kevin," but he's kind of invisible. He's here to shadow. I start going through the interview, and she's sweating, and I go, "Is everything okay?" She goes, Yeah. I'm okay. Do you need some water? Can we turn up the AC? She goes, I just have to be honest with you. This situation's a little different. And I said, "Well, do you want me to have Kevin leave?" And she goes, "Actually, no, it's different because he's so good looking. I can't concentrate." And so I go, "Well, do you want me to leave?"
Oh my
God. We had a chuckle. Of course I'm coaching Kevin, like, that's never happened to me. It probably won't ever happen to you again. And honestly, I just felt like chopped liver. And so probably gonna sketch her in as a no hire, because I couldn't get her to answer any of the questions because she was so focused on looking at you. So those things sometimes happen, and hey, to their credit, she put it out there. So
that's greatness.
We'll
thank you, Chris.
Good story.
Period.
All right. Thanks for the time. Love you guys
so much.
Thank you much
for being on the show. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Bev. I know you're the mastermind behind all this.
if people want to get in touch with you, what are
Chris at couchbase.com. Join me on LinkedIn. So
you're a
it's
good
all
man.
good. Chris at
Thank you so much.
couchbase.com.
You're
All
donating
right.
so much time.
See y'all. Keep up the good work.
That's all the time we
TA
have for-
Universe. Keep up the good work. HR Universe is as this year has proven, there's a lot more work ahead for folks like us.
100%.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Keynotes. For more killer content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We welcome all comments and questions and are grateful for any input regarding future content, topics, and guests. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.